Oh boy. Um, so this review, it took me about a month and a half to even come up with anything to say on the topic of this film because, well, number one, it's a Gaspar Noé film, and those are notoriously difficult to tackle in any meaningful way. And number two, it's about death, and I recently just lost my grandfather, so that also kind of made it difficult to come up with anything to say about this. But me personally, I don't really think I'm that afraid of death. I mean, sure, it's a scary thing to think about, and it's like one of life's great unknowns and all that. But I feel like I've kind of come to terms with it, if that makes sense. Probably not, considering I'm nowhere near that. And I don't know how I would actually react in the situation where I find out that that's happening to me. So I don't think I'm afraid of it. Not really. What I'm more afraid of is the decay that comes with that. The idea that over days, months, years, the body just grows weaker, heart stops, maybe stomach ache might not be a stomach ache, something worse. And worst, your brain might start to rot. All your memory is just gone. All that's left is a husk of who you were. Um, as the opening of this film says, he is no way dedicates this film to those whose brains will rot before their hearts. Um, I definitely feel the same way. That is one of the most horrific ways to die I can think of. It's easy to be afraid of the idea of death in general, but I feel like it's way easier to be afraid of the journey that such a thing would take you on. Would it be painful? Would it be peaceful or something in between? Would you just go to sleep one night and not wake up at all? Would it just happen that fast? Like it's more frightening to think of the journey that such a thing would take someone on than the actual facts of it for me. I feel like I've waffled on about my own personal feelings on this long enough. I should get into the film now. Um, Vortex follows an old couple and their son through some days of the last days of the old couple's lives. Um, the couple are played by Dario Argento and Francois Lebrun. Um, the man he suffers from heart problems, and the woman, she's suffering from dementia that is very rapidly rotting her brain, and as they both deteriorate, it, the the lurking beast of death just follows them at every moment. And I feel like this is a rather personal film for Noé because in early 2020 he suffered a nearly fatal brain hemorrhage, and while he did come out of it unscathed, relatively at least, it most definitely served for inspiration for this film. Saying that a film about an old couple slowly reaching their end is Noé's tamest film is not without irony. But Noé's restraint to fall into his usual maximalist filmmaking with the flashing strobe images and the harsh content honestly ends up making this the scariest thing he's ever made. Uh, and I have only seen, and Into the Void, Climax, and Lux Eterna. I straight up refuse to watch Irreversible. I just refuse to. Because if I did watch Irreversible, I would feel very tempted to skip over that one scene. But doing that kind of robs the film of its emotional core, I think. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, back to Vortex. During the film, as I was watching it, I had two anxiety attacks, and near the end, I was just crying for a good 30 minutes. The content wasn't bloody or gory. It wasn't violent, and yet it was at the same time. It was just looking at the emptiness and the crippling reality of that sort of pain. How one day I might just look around my surroundings and see nothing but empty shells and rooms, that everything I've made for myself is just gone, no way to get it back. Like, much of the journey in Vortex with the central characters is for them to try and maintain both their dignity and their idealistic concepts of tranquility and youth, basically. The man has this long-lasting romantic interest that he just can't seem to reach, and the mother understands somewhat that her brain is rotting, and she tries to fight against it to no avail. And even as the couple's son is suffering from problems of his own, he still tries to be a father to his own son and to his parents. Each of these three characters understand the points that they're at internally, but their minds just wander to other conclusions. Some parts of the film like most of the film surrounds itself in conversations, and there's about dreams, and it even almost has a meta narrative around itself as it discusses the ideas of films simply being the dreams of its creators. However, all dreams are susceptible to becoming nightmares. For almost the entire film, Vortex utilizes a dual screen technique like in Lux Eterna, but here it's not a gimmick. Basically, we follow both characters at once. Sometimes they're in the same room, other times they're far apart from each other, but the distance between them on the screen always remains the same. As I said, unlike in Lux Eterna, this is actually a really well done use of this technique. He utilizes it to explore what the film is ultimately exploring. Vortex is a film about distance and how our age and bodies follow this concept as much as we do. The distance we make in age, the distance our bodies go from the peak we find ourselves at in our younger days, and the distance our mind can go from its original effectiveness. I would honestly call Vortex a horror movie in the guise of a psychological drama. The fear of the body's decay is felt through every single frame of the film by a director and writer who is also afraid of what he tackles thematically and has tackled in his own life. As Vortex reaches its end, it reminds us that the living will not be in this state infinitely, and eventually the ticking clock of time will take us all. Until then, we just have to love and live the life we have until deterioration takes us away. I really can't think of a film that has made me this emotional in a, it, I think the main reason is just because of what's been happening in my own life with my grandfather passing away, and actually experiencing the reality of that for my reality of death in general for myself in reality, because before it was this abstract idea that I only really thought about in passing, and then he died, and I couldn't. Yeah, um, that's the review. This is probably the most. Anyway, no, just thanks for watching. Subscribe, like if you liked it. I guess I don't care. Um, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody.